Welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. We're talking about the business of creativity today from the headquarters of one of India's youngest and buzziest independent shops, Talented. Founded in 2022, the Bengaluru-based agency has not only carved a name for itself through its work for brands like Britannia, MakeMyTrip, Swiggy and more, but also continues to make headlines for disrupting the traditional agency business model. To know more, we are in conversation with co-founder and CEO Gautam Reghunath. Can running an agency be a high-profit business? How does an agency navigate procurement? And what's the end goal for Talented? Let's find out as we get ready to melt with Gautam Reghunath. Gautam, welcome back to Melt. The last time we spoke, Talented was working out of a co-working space in Bangalore. I see a fancy new office. Now, other than the obvious, what else has changed in the last 1 year?
Firstly, Suresh, welcome to Bengaluru. Welcome back to Bengaluru, may I say.
Thank you.
Well, the office for starters, we used to run out of co-working space. We've tried to build our own space now. We're still very much remote first. So most of our talent is spread across the country. But the office, I like to think of the office as more of like a place to congregate, a temple, so to speak. So people still work remotely, come in a few days a week if they want to. That's changed. We've recently, not sure that you know about this, but we recently started our model of network agencies. It's called the Grid model. We just launched our second company. It's a social first company called The New Thing. It's an entrepreneur-led company, which is plugs into, let's say, Talented's grid of shared services. That's new. I think a lot of our talent has done remarkably well the last year. A lot of them are making global name for themselves. We've got 5 people heading to Cannes this year on scholarships. That's new. What else? Yeah, I think there's an internal marker for how we'd like to rate our success. It's whether we start feeling the need for a website. So no, we still don't have a website.
Still no website.
Absolutely. So I don't know what that means. Whether people are finding our work outside of the web. We haven't felt the need to show off our work outside on a website yet. Maybe our work is finding people automatically.
Gautam, a lot of companies are calling people back to the office.
Yeah.
Large tech companies, to be sure. And they're almost making it mandatory.
Yeah.
And employees are saying, do I want this job or do I want to work from home?
Yeah.
Is this remote model working seamlessly for you or are they still?
I wouldn't have it any other way. It's not. I don't think this is working. We're thriving in the remote model. It's been a fantastic way to attract talent. Anyone who says otherwise aren't speaking to their employees enough. So yes, I think we want to continue being remote first as much as we can. There's merit and value in coming together frequently. We do that for a couple of weeks every quarter where everybody's here. But yes, I think for the foreseeable future, we have no other plans but to be remote first.
From the outside view, we'd say Talented keeps making news for 3 different reasons. One, obviously, the work that you do. Second, your disruptive take on the ad business model. And 3, like you spoke, your efforts to retain, maintain, champion talent. Why is it necessary for an agency to talk about the business model, these other issues that you talk about?
The industry as a whole should start talking about things outside of work. And I'll tell you why. I think we have a business model problem. The way that agencies have been pricing ourselves historically is warped. There's a lot to fix. We're pricing for man hours and time. The short version of most agency client contracts is, here you go, take a whole bunch of our employee hours in exchange for a whole bunch of your work that they can execute. There is something fundamentally warped in that model because we are only costing for input time and not on the value of our effort. So at Talented, we often like to, show our work and the process and how we sort of built it and crafted it because we think there's value in doing that well. We think there's value in showing off the hours of craft and education and experiences that have gone into creating something. And I think over a period of time, doing that well potentially elevates the value of our services.
It's odd that a creative business is valued by a number of man hours and input time. What if I'm a brilliant genius and I can come up with an idea in 10 minutes that takes you 6 hours to come up with? Should I be paid less than you because I came up with a brilliant idea in 10 minutes?
Exactly. It's a historical problem. I'd say we're possibly in the 3rd era of agency pricing, and I'll try and walk you through what I think are the 3 eras. The first was the era of pricing where we were based on a commission model. where creativity was a secondary service to media buying. The creative services were at a percentage of media. So let's say you spend $100 in media, the creative agency delivering the creative to be placed on the media would make 10 to 15% of that 100 or whatever was spent. To be honest, where my head's at right now is that I think that's a far better model than what's been happening recently, which is the second phase of agency pricing, which is priced on input effort, the number of hours that anyone is spending. So you're right. And it's so hard to measure creativity. I mean, I might come up with something in 10 minutes, or I might be staring at a blank screen for weeks.
Or go for a walk in Cubbon Park to get a creative idea for 2 hours, and maybe that's the way to do it.
So yeah, absolutely. Any system that penalizes, particularly the system that penalizes coming up with something quicker, doesn't work. So yeah, I think there's a fascinating story about where the manner-based pricing originally started. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and apparently it was David Ogilvy in somewhere in the I'm not sure, 70s or 80s, but out of the Houston office of Ogilvy, where the Shell business was going through a little bit of not a good situation. So David Ogilvy apparently suggested the manner-based pricing as a temporary resolution till Shell was able to find its feet again as an organization and be able to afford agency services more. But yeah, I think we've been stuck with that pricing model for the last 40 years. Maybe it wasn't as big of a problem during a media era where we didn't have to produce so much in so little time. But in today's cluttered media landscape, I don't think it works anymore.
Gautam, what would you say are the specific challenges that agencies face today on two fronts, on generating revenue and ensuring profitability based on that revenue?
Like I said, I don't think we have a working business model anymore in advertising. The majority of advertising doesn't have a working...
It's a pretty controversial statement to make. It's a large industry with really huge players in it.
I genuinely believe it. I don't know if we think enough about our business model, right? I think if folks in other industries heard the way that we price, they'd be dumbfounded. It's absurd. We're still pricing for employee hours, not on the value that we generate. And that's where the entire problem starts. Because once you're charging based on man hours, it gets into a cyclical process. Here's how a pitch goes. Let's say a large pitch. We sign a client. We've got a fantastic equation with the marketing teams. We hand it over to their friendly neighbors, the procurement team. The procurement team walks into the room. It's all fun and games. Till then, essentially what we need to do then for procurement to come to the negotiation table is to share information, and very, very granular information. And typically, it's to the level of individual employee salaries and even our profit margins. Full transparency, right? That's what they negotiate on. I don't think any other business works that way.
But aren't those trade secrets, for instance, your salaries or your profit margins?
I don't know if there's anything, it needs to be a trade secret as much as I don't think the other side has any business
knowing all that. Yeah.
Knowing all of that. It's not how you walk into a restaurant and you're getting a meal. That's not how the restaurant works. I'm not asking for the salaries
or the
salaries of the
incentives
chefs or the servers, or anyone working in the kitchen for that matter, right? But our industry still predominantly for the larger accounts still works in that model. So you've got to understand why then the problems itself are cyclical. You're then trying to negotiate on man hours. You're trying to give the procurement teams the cheapest possible man hour rate that we can come to an agreement with. Now, what happens in that scenario is your margins are driven down tremendously. Isn't it obvious that over a period of time, you will then start valuing a client that you do not have? And I mean pitches, where you potentially have to pitch more instead of focusing on the client that you've already won. So that problem is cyclical. We therefore, over a period of time, our best talent might be working on pitches instead of existing clients who they should be servicing.
There's another elephant in the room. Once upon a time, procurement teams used to be in charge of buying cement and steel and commodities. Right? When did procurement teams started buying creative services? Because essentially procurement means commoditization, doesn't it?
Very true. I mean, I don't think the intention is to villainize one side here. I think the real problem is the lack of a business model at our end. We don't value our own services enough. Most agencies look the exact same. Obviously, we will be commoditized. And yeah, you're right. Procurement teams are also the same folks negotiating for other
cement, steel, and God knows what else.
And there is no other option. I don't think in 5 years, any agency would be charging in the current manner model. I don't think that system is going to exist anymore.
So, Gautam, given the realities that you just talked about, marketing, procurement, man hours, commoditization, how can an agency such as yours improve on two fronts? One, cost management to control your costs, and two, to improve your profitability.
Suresh, I think the simplest thing to do is first stop charging for input and start charging for value. Now, take the case of an agency like Talented. At a very macro level, you can separate our services almost into two. There are commoditized services. I would say 70 to 80% of advertising can currently fall under commoditized services. But the rest is where you actually drive value, which is your magic offerings. The power of your brains, ideation, conceptualization, right? Coming up with things. Those are magic offerings that cannot be charged on time anymore. So I think of your services as two-pronged. Start having rate cards for the commoditizable bits for all I care. But I think perceived value is how we need to start charging for the magic offerings, like ideation. I think that's a good enough start.
Okay, that will help your top line. Any suggestions on what you can do to control costs and improve bottom line?
Operating under a model of having to control costs, I'm not entirely sure how that works in our business, because upwards of 80% of our costs are our talent.
There's not much you can do on that front.
I don't think there's much that you should do, because I think that is our only moat. Talented's ambition is to attract the brightest, most sharpest creative people in the country. And that comes at a price. And we can't begin to sort of, I think the more we commoditize our services and think of saving costs by cutting down on people, I wouldn't know how to run a business like that.
You probably have witnessed a lot of operational inefficiencies that large agencies are prone to. Any ideas on how you can control these operational inefficiencies and thereby improve your margins, I guess?
Again, a great place to start from is anyone who starts an agency knows that I think the majority of agencies today are built to be risk averse. Most of us pontificate the same things. Most clients tell us that the opening 20 slides of most pitches look and sound the exact same.
We just ignore the first 30% of all presentations. Yeah, I agree.
Thanks. We're talking about our people, our processes, the awards. Sometimes the awards are the same. For the same campaigns across 3-4 different agencies. So I think we've historically been very, very risk averse. And again, that shows in our pricing. We're so concerned about input costs and how to cost manage that procurement teams see through this. If we're only thinking cost, we're not thinking value of our services. And maybe that's a good place to start.
You spoke about this dilemma between retaining an existing client, putting your best creative minds on an existing client versus acquiring new clients. Gautam, this reminds me of a strategy in American football, which is very different from cricket. They have offensive teams and defensive teams. They take an entire team off and bring an entire team on when the game changes. So is there a case for two kinds of teams, one that works on existing clients and to deliver value to them, and a sort of pitch team that does nothing but pitches?
I've never been in an agency where that's worked. I think your work for your current clients is the best new business tool. Now, we can get into a whole new, a 1-hour debate about why I don't believe pitching is the right process in the first place. I also think, it might be slightly controversial, but I also think retention is overrated. I don't want to operate with a retention mindset. We're very comfortable right now, and maybe a little bit of context on Talented sort of book of clients as well. The majority of our client engagements are on the project model, and it took me a while to get used to it. And as a custodian,
there's a certain comfort in retainers, though, isn't there?
But that's also why we're risk averse, right? Because we're so enamored by the surety of 12 months of predictable revenue that we don't feel like we need to take any risks. And so I think retention is overrated. And I tell you why we love the project model. It allows us to cost better. You're able to think of, hey, you know what? Here's what I believe. And this is my business and nobody else's business. It's our business to sort of figure out what our margins should be, right? So as soon as a project comes in, we're able to determine, you know what do we think is an appropriate margin for a project like this? We're able to take that right off the top and then staff the project accordingly. And I think our realization over the last 24 something months of trying this is that at the end of the day, everybody feels like they walked out of the room after a project saying, "Hey, we got the good end of the deal, both the clients and us." So I think retention's overrated, but I do see the merits of, from a P&L holder, of having 12 months of predictable revenue.
CFOs love that.
Well, I mean, actually, a massive shout out to our finance lead Sonal, who's been a thorough partner with me through this.
Right, Gautam, let's change gears and talk about external factors that impact your business. Other businesses, IT for instance, gets impacted by US elections or Indian elections or oil price or wars around the world. What external factors impact your business?
I wouldn't be too presumptuous to sort of think of our tiny little businesses as having massive effects by extraneous circumstances like that. We're too tiny to be so impacted by macroeconomic factors. We're only 60 people.
But an economic boom in the country will create more advertising opportunity, for instance.
Of course, absolutely. We're beneficiaries of that. But I would like to think that we're a lot more concerned about our internal operations than external factors. And they're so much more easier to control and to get right. There's plenty of room and margin to get right basis our competition currently in the market. So that's what we're concerned about. We're focused on the people that we let in. We focused on the kind of clients that we are choosing to work with. And all of these we have control over. And I think that's
managing what you have control over is tough enough than worrying about external factors.
I mean, people are the toughest thing in the world to manage. And I think, that's where a lot of our energy goes.
So let me paint a hypothetical picture for you. You walk in, the marketing team, you make a pitch, you're completely in sync with them, they're impressed with you. Next comes the procurement team that's saying, okay, how many man hours, what salaries, what's the cost of your coffee machine? I don't know what they're asking you for. How are you justifying your premium pricing to a procurement team, for instance? How do you do it?
So if someone asks us, okay, explain the premium pricing or explain why you're charging so, our answer is a polite version of none of your business. And I mean, like I said, I don't think it's anyone's business to understand how we're costed internally to determine the value of our services or to come to an agreement on price. So yes, we're a premium priced agency service. No, we do not have a clear, obvious cost-based answer to give you as to why.
I'm hearing a little subtext in what you're saying, that the India's agencies need to get together to formulate some sort of common strategy to deal with this, maybe?
I don't know if it needs to be at an industry body level, but I do think agencies are slowly realizing that this is happening. I don't think in about 5 to 6 years, any agency is going to be still continuing to price based on input hours. I think that system's gone bust. It doesn't work anymore. There are no margins to be made.
Gautam, we've always maintained that human creativity can be a brand and the agency's biggest differentiator. Has AI or other technology changed your view on this?
I think the thing to realize is that modern advertising isn't only the great advertising that you're seeing on all our portfolios and our Instagram and stuff like that. Modern advertising is equally about producing a lot of work, very quick, for very cheap.
Just run-of-the-mill stuff. That's.
I mean, you try to inject as much creativity into as possible, but I'm saying because of the way that media is commoditized now, there are a whole bunch of deliverables that are commoditized, and there's nothing wrong in that. You need that to sustain any sort of media strategy or plan. AI raises the floor for that kind of work. It goes from below average to average, from average to above average. So in that way, AI raises the floor, but I think it's still a long way away from raising the ceiling. Human ingenuity still wins.
So what's next for Talented? Going global, other aspirations? Do you have an end game in mind?
We'd love to go international. Why not? We're not sure if it's going to look like the model that you've been seeing over the last few years where the work is outsourced back to India. I don't think that's the model that we're excited by, even if we do. Creativity is cultural. You've got to go to markets. And most of advertising is about understanding cultural nuances. So if we ever go international, it will be building from scratch. I think the grid model that we now have sits very well for us to experiment in various forms. I don't know, maybe our first international foray might not even look like an agency. We just, like I said, we're just a bunch of people excited by a bunch of creative endeavors. So I'm hoping the market will surprise.
What does this grid model mean exactly?
Again, it's a work in progress. We're figuring out how it works. So say I wanted to experiment with, let's say, something outside of our regular run-of-the-mill work, which is creative work. We saw value in splitting our social services and our creator services separately from our creative work itself. So therefore, brought on an entrepreneur who we believed was the right person to build it, Britannia, who was brand lead of Swiggy and Tinder, etc. He came on board as an entrepreneur to build the shop with us. So he's the founder of that agency. He's the owner of that company, which is plugged into what we're calling the talented grid. So kind of works like a network, but it's run by entrepreneurs with skin in the game themselves. They're not employees of the company. They're entrepreneurs themselves. Talented remains a significant shareholder in most companies.
All right, Gautam Reghunath, thank you very much for talking to Melt, and all the best.
Thank you, Suresh.
And now it's time for a creative pick. Here's a tongue-in-cheek spoof spot for work management platform Teamwork that recounts some of the painfully relatable issues that arise between agencies and their clients. Created by UMalt, the playful parody will certainly rattle some nerves. Enjoy.
What is it?
It's some kind of message.
I don't get it. Who would demand such a thing?
It's the client.
My vendors need a wake-up call, and I'm the one that's going to give it to them.
He wants to get on a call.
Sure, this afternoon works.
He wants to meet now.
I've got changes.
But you approved everything last week.
Oops.
The client is ruining efficiency and profitability everywhere.
The client says we never sent him the password to the file.
He's literally responding to the email that I gave it to him in, bolded and highlighted.
Why does account management cost this much?
That's just...
I want a full breakdown of what everyone is doing.
But...
What's the issue? I'm sure you're tracking your time. You say good, fast, cheap, pick two? Well, I want all three.
How do we resource this? How do we make money? How do we stop the client?
He doesn't need to be stopped. He needs to be managed.
Who said that?
It's not who I am. It's the tools I use.
Who are you?
I'm Dave from Teamwork.com, the only platform that helps you manage your client work profitably. It makes clients, like the client, less clienty. Here, use it.
He says he didn't show the CEO the project until now. They've got changes. And he wants to hop on another call.
And with that, it's a wrap on Melt. Keep following Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. If you'd like to follow me, I'm at Suvenk on X. Till next week, goodbye, and thanks for watching.